Giannis Antetokounmpo. The name arrives like a fact everyone remembers after they first hear it. Greek freak, Milwaukee Bucks, NBA MVP, and NBA championship. A ledger of labels that only tell part of the story. This is the story beneath the headlines, the one that moves from a cracked corner in Spolia, where cheap sunglasses were traded for coins, to arenas that roar with a crowd's collective belief. This is a story of hunger turned to muscle, and stubbornness turned into craft. This is the Giannis Antetokounmpo story. The long arc from selling sunglasses to scoring 50, from boy in a market to a man who carried a city. On that concrete corner in Spolia, a young Giannis learns how the world measures value. He watches the rhythm of vendors, feels the burn of shame when a sale does not happen, and learns the discipline of patience. The same hands that extend sunglasses someday grip a basketball with purpose. Each rejection becomes a lesson. Every small humiliation is stamped into determination. He trains by instinct at first, endless pickup games under dim streetlights, layups in smudged gyms, and an appetite that cannot be fed with coins alone. The draft was not a guarantee. The 2013 draft, the moment his name was called, reads now like destiny, but destiny did not arrive without insistence. Scouts saw length and raw movement. Coaches saw a boy who could learn. When Giannis left Spolia for a professional track, he took with him a family's faith and a single photograph tucked into a worn jersey. He learned quickly that talent without structure dissolves. At Philathleticos, he learned to eat for fuel, to study film, to move with intention. He learned to turn limbs that once seemed awkward into a machine for leverage and timing. Giannis's rookie years in the NBA were a collection of small, surgical improvements. The weight room taught him how to turn speed into stability. The film room taught anticipation. The quiet hours after practice taught repetition. He added inches of strength and a discipline to his game that few noticed outside the building. The label project followed him for a time, but projects can be finished. He finished his with sweat, with the kind of patience that keeps coming back to a drill when no one is watching, Recognition arrived in increments, a stat line here, a highlight there, then whispers of awards. NBA MVP entered conversations not as an accident, but as proof of a deliberate, daily curriculum. Yet every accolade carried a new gravity. Giannis found leadership required him to trade shots for trust, to transform himself from an individual scorer into a teammate who could elevate others. He learned that winning MVPs meant more than personal glory. It meant carrying expectations and learning to temper them with humility. Suspense threaded through every season like a taut wire. There were games where a single possession could tilt a legacy, nights where the hoop felt like a distant island, and close calls that tested a core of resolve. The playoffs crystallized these moments into pressure so dense it could be tasted. In those arenas, Giannis condensed years of layups, sprints, and corrected mechanics into split-second decisions. A single drive, a single block, a single rebound could rewrite decades of yearning for a city. His 50-point nights did not appear in a vacuum. Each explosive game was a ledger of micro-choices. Extra free throws after practice, resistance band sessions in the dark, film rewinds that turned mistakes into memory. The 50 points on a scoreboard became shorthand for sacrifice, for mornings when hunger took the place of comfort, for the brother who shared one pair of shoes, for a mother who counted coins until sleep arrived. When Giannis poured those points into playoff nights, a city's drought of hope transformed into communal release. Yet the climb was never only physical. Giannis navigated an identity composed of threads, Nigerian heritage braided with a Greek upbringing, and he lived the push and pull of belonging in a world that wanted him to be simple. His complexity became empathy, and empathy became leadership. He returned to Spolia not as a triumphant outsider, but as a man who remembers the ledger of where he came from. He built programs, clinics, and scholarships with the intention that children in the same streets would find tools he once lacked. His philanthropy aimed for permanence, to level an uneven starting line so other kids could imagine a different life without leaving home. Rivalries sharpened him. Defenders at the highest level forced Giannis to refine footwork, to disguise intent, to widen his repertoire beyond raw drives. He added post moves that could outwit veterans, learned to pick the perfect angle for an elbowed step-through, and developed court vision to convert isolation into coordinated offense. On defense, his length and timing erased possibilities before they began. His chase-down blocks rewrote opponents' playbooks. These signatures, the Euro step, the chase-down block, the impossible closeout, became part of highlight reels and search queries, the concrete moments that define Greek freak in highlight compilations and YouTube suggestions. Still, accolades created a different kind of pressure. There were whispers of doubt during cold stretches, nights when the rhythm refused to come, and headlines that insisted on narrative more than nuance. Those were the days when Giannis retreated into work. He used film not as confirmation, but as instruction. He sought conversations with coaches who could point to the exact angle of a foot that needed correction, the precise wrist flick that could refine his release. Mental training mattered as much as physical repetition. He learned rituals that cleared his head, long walks that dissolved noise into focus, quiet family calls that restored perspective, and disciplined sleep that allowed the body to rebuild. The locker room revealed a quieter transformation. Leadership was not trophies or speeches, but the small acts that steadied a team, easing a rookie's nerves with a few words, staying late to fix a teammate's shot, assigning praise where praise was due. Giannis learned that building culture demanded humility. He practiced it daily by listening, by sharing moments of quiet accountability, by letting others take the light when it helped the team glow brighter. These acts compounded into a team identity that outlasted any single highlight, a culture that could carry a season when headlines wavered. Suspense returned in almost cinematic bursts, a close series decided by a last-second possession, an injury scare that made headlines and tightened stomachs, a season when a franchise's future seemed hingeless. In each of these moments, the question was not merely physical ability, but whether the accumulation of choices could hold under pressure. The answer rarely came from raw talent. It arrived from the repetition, the small corrections, the humility to change, and the community that believed and sustained him. Off the court, Giannis faced the strange architecture of fame. Interviews dissected his words, and social media condensed complex sentiments into hot takes. He cultivated a small circle that shielded him from noise: family, trusted trainers, coaches who spoke truth. In private, he returned to habits that kept him human: cooking with family, joking with brothers about old shoes, sitting quietly through a neighborhood clinic, and teaching footwork on a chipped floor. These moments anchored him. They were reminders that the ledger of life includes both gains and obligations, and that the most meaningful investments were the ones that widened paths for others. He built institutions. Foundations funded education and community projects. Clinics taught not just footwork, but discipline. Scholarships opened doors. He invested in gyms where kids could practice in safety. He created mentors who taught both skill and the value of steady work. The legacy he imagined was not framed by individual trophies, but by structural change. Fewer kids forced into markets to survive, more kids given access to coaching and nutrition, more families with a different set of choices. Tactical evolution remained relentless. Giannis adapted to smaller, faster lineups by improving lateral quickness and adding passing angles that turned double teams into assists. He turned isolation possessions into team possessions by reading help defenders and kicking to open shooters. He learned the subtle language of timing on defense, how to take a charge, how to rotate a step earlier, how to make opponents hesitate at the arc. Those tactical shifts were invisible to casual viewers, but essential to dominance. They are the quiet grammar that made highlight moments repeatable rather than accidental. His relationship with Milwaukee is a chapter of mutual transformation. The city that once stood in drought of championships discovered a new narrative when banners rose, longtime fans cried openly, children in halls saw themselves reflected in impossibilities, and neighborhoods that had waited decades celebrated together. Giannis's MVPs and championship nights did not erase past disappointments, they recontextualized them. Victory became communal repair. It was not simply about winning games, but about delivering a kind of civic exhale. Yet victories produced introspection, what endures beyond celebration. Giannis measured legacy by the number of clinics sustained after his career, by scholarships still active 10 years later, by the culture of a franchise that prioritized growth over a single title. He wanted stories of kids who had options because of structures he helped build. That was his way of ensuring the doors he had opened stayed open. Family remained central. Brothers who once shared shoes now shared jokes about rings. A mother's quiet guidance still shaped the man who stepped onto courts drenched in light. Post-game calls home were rituals, small recentering acts that kept him tethered to origin. Those family ties were the moral scaffolding for every public decision, contract talks, charitable choices, moments of media attention. In a world that rewards spectacle, the family reminded him of substance. There were private doubts, too. Nights when the future looked uncertain, times when injuries threatened continuity, and moments when the narrative of success felt precarious. These interior struggles fueled suspense in the truest sense. Not whether he could score, but whether the discipline of years could withstand unforeseen ruptures. Each time crises arrived, Giannis turned to practice. Extra free throws, longer film sessions, conversations with doctors and trainers about recovery. His answers were never glamorous. They were consistent and thorough. The arc of his career extends beyond the scoreboard. It is measured in how many kids in Spolia can now imagine different futures, in the systems that provide nutrition and coaching, and in the quiet cultural shifts of cities that once lost hope. Giannis Antetokounmpo's name will be spoken in highlight reels and search queries, in Greek Freak compilations and Milwaukee Bucks championship retrospectives. But the deeper record of his life is held in clinics, scholarship lists, and the small faces of kids who learned a step because he taught them. This ledger, the daily deposits of work, humility, and giving, compounds. From cheap sunglasses on a cracked Athenian sidewalk to 50-point playoff nights, from back-and-forth MVP conversations to the final buzzer of a championship game, Giannis has chosen a path where success and responsibility travel together. The suspense of his story is not merely in whether he wins another game or another award. It is in whether the institutions and cultures he builds will persist long after the lights dim. And still, the story continues. More film sessions, more clinics, more mornings spent with family, and small acts of teaching. The promise is ongoing, that the doors opened by one boy from Spolia remain ajar for the next. The narrative of Giannis Antetokounmpo is not an arrival, but a long, deliberate work. A promise that hunger, when refined by craft and matched with care, can remake not just a body or a career, but a city, a sport, and the lives of those who follow.